Okay, folks, well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to our 6th Zoom channel party question and answer session with this one, Phantom of the Opera, celebrating its 35th anniversary. Wonderful. This is Theatre Talk UK welcomes Phantom of the Opera. I'm going to hand you over to my co-host for the day, Mr. John Rinaldi, and we're going to start with everybody who is a Phantom alumni. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and your connection to the show. Shall we start with Miss Claire Moore?
Hello, can everybody
hear?
Hi
Claire, welcome.
Have I done the right thing?
You have.
Good. Yeah, well, I'm Claire Moore, and I was in the original company of Phantom, along with some other gorgeous people here who you'll be meeting in a minute. And I was Sarah Brightman's alternate as Christine, and then took over the role all those years ago.
James Paterson.
Can you hear me? Yeah,
we can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, everybody. Yeah, James. I always think I sound like a butler if people call me James. Ellen Jackson rather affectionately calls me Jinky. I don't know where that came from, but I'm more commonly known in theatre circles as Jimmy, so let's use that if you don't mind. Like Claire, I was in the original cast playing Donatello and Passerino. I covered Andre and covered the Phantom and got 5 or 2.5 minutes of fame when I went on at very short notice for Mr. Crawford when he had a hiatus hernia. I went on to cover it for quite a bit longer, played Andre for 18 months, left the show, went back and became resident director for about 10 years. So a long association. I used to say that if you took some blood or matter out of my brain, you would find some lyrics or some music from Phantom of the Opera. I'm getting on a bit now, and I think it's probably like the blood and the brain going a bit thin now. But hi, hello.
Hi.
Mark Pawsey.
Hello. I'm Mark Pawsey, but everybody, I'm afraid, knows me as Madge. So yes, this is Madge. And I was leaving drama school when Phantom opened in 1986, 87. And I was at Phantom from 94 until 98. So I did year 6 until year 11. Claire was my first Christine. She was alternate when I started. Jimmy was in the show. Mike, I can't remember if you were Raoul when I was there, but
yes,
when I was first there, Lynn was there, everybody was there, and then Stewart came in, and of course the lovely Ellen Jackson was there throughout my tenure. So yes, that's me.
Until Lynn.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't tell you what
sorry,
I did.
I was going to say, well, who did you do? Who were you?
Yeah, I was deputy stage manager to start with, and then I became stage manager. But I had done the company manager in Manchester. I did the Manchester Phantom prior to the London one. I'm shutting up now.
On to Lynn then.
Hello, follow that. Hi, my name is Lynn. On the little camera, it says it's Lynn Brown, but actually my stage name is Jezzard. So I was in the show. I was original cast with Claire and Jimmy, and I was a ballet girl. There was 6 of us, and one of Gilly Lynn's ballet girls. And I stayed with the show for a very long time, and I came out a couple of times, had some children, and I went back into the show. First of all, I had the dance captain, then ballet mistress, and eventually I was resident choreographer up until the show closed when we had the COVID. And so my association and connection with the show lasted sort of 30 odd years. I worked
wow.
with Jimmy as resident director, and Claire was one of my favourite, if I dare say. Don't want to offend any other Christines, probably my favourite Christine. So I think I'm here with lots of wonderful people.
Fabulous. On to Ellen.
Hi, I'm Ellen Jackson, and I joined the show, I think it was about 5 years after it opened. I was playing a wild woman, and I covered the wardrobe mistress, confidant, and Madame Giry, second cover Giry. I stayed at Phantom until the lockdown. So I was in it in a total of 28 years, I think. Although I did have a year break after 9 years and went back into the show, and eventually played the wardrobe mistress confidant. I got too old for Giry. That way.
Oh, wonderful, Ellen. On to Stewart.
Hello there, my name's Stewart Arnott. I joined the show in '95 as a member of the stage management team, an ASM. It was Mark who very kindly gave me the job, so Mark was the reason I had anything to do with Phantom at all. I stayed for quite some time. After 5 years or so, I had moved up through the ranks and became the stage manager, and then remained the stage manager for the next 20 years until the show closed due to COVID back at the beginning of last year. I didn't have the pleasure of working with Claire on Phantom, but I know Claire from way back. I think it was from Saigon, I think, would be where our connection goes back to. As I said, Mark was the one who very kindly got me the job on Phantom. Lynn and Jimmy, of course, I worked with for many, many years on the show. And there are other people, probably too many to mention here, on this call, who I also worked with on the show. Ellen, of course. Mike, I think you were there when I started. I think you were Raoul when I started and then became the Phantom. Yeah. And I'm sure there are others. So I'm very sorry if there's anybody else on this call, because I'm trying to scroll through all the faces and see who I recognize. But yeah, my connection with the show was a good 25 years all told, until COVID put an end to that for everybody.
Oh, thank you, Stewart. And lastly, and but no way by least, Mike Sterling.
How are you doing? Yes, Mike Sterling. Hello. This is lovely. I joined Phantom in '93 in Manchester as the original Raoul there. I was there for 2 years. So I worked with let me see, Dave Willis, Lisa Hall. It was that lovely cast there. And I got to go on as Phantom there too. Consequently, '97, I went to London as Raoul and covering the Phantom. '98, I sort of took on splitting the role, 4 each a week. And then '99, I took on full time, left in 2000 and worked with the gorgeous Madge, Jimmy Paterson, Lynn Jezzard Brown, and Ellen Jackson, and all you fabulous people there. I mean, it was just a glorious time. And this is really lovely to say hi like this. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Right, so I think we'll should we start at the beginning then, because I think there's a couple of you there who were there from the start. So Claire, how did you come to be involved in the show? What was your process like, as they like to say these days? How did it start for you?
It started because I did Little Shop of Horrors for Cameron, where I understudied Ellen Green, Audrey, and then I went and had a year at the National Theatre, which was rather marvellous. And then, but Cameron knew my background, which had been training in opera at the Royal Northern College of Music, and so when I was still at the National Theatre, I got a call to go and audition. So I took something, I can't remember oh yes I can. I tell you what I took. I took O mio babino caro, because I knew that to be one of Andrew's favourite arias, so I thought I'll creep to the boss. That was the first thing. And I sang the very appropriate not My Man's Gone Now from Porgy and Bess. So I sang that. Hal was there. In those days, there wasn't a kind of casting director thing. You went in and you would meet the director and the musical director, and so there I was, and they said, oh, can you hang around and have a look at these 2 pieces of music? So there was no piano, there was nowhere to go. It's good job I could read music, and it turned out that one of them was Think of Me, a bit of Think of Me, and one of them was a bit of Wishing. So I went in a corner and kind of had a little look through, and then sort of went back later on and sang a bit. In fact, it wasn't Think of Me then. If my memory serves me correctly, and I think we've probably had this conversation before, Jimmy, when Richard Stilgoe was then the sole lyricist with the show before Charlie Hart came on board. So, and the song I think was called Elephants, and it went something like, elephants never forget you, blah de blah blah blah, whatever it was. I mean, I just remember thinking, oh, this is kind of weird. Anyway, so I sang a bit of that, sang a bit of Wishing, and that was my audition, which was jolly fun, and then got offered the alternate. Didn't really know what an alternate was then, but anyway, I said yes, because why, you wouldn't say no, would you, to a new show, and just turned up for rehearsals like everybody else, and there the adventure began. It was just the most fun, terrifying, slightly weird time for me, because I never got to do any rehearsals before I actually went on for the first time, which both Jimmy and Lynn will remember, I think, because you were probably on there propping me up with everybody else. But the most glorious memories, I've got nothing but happy memories of that show and the people I worked with and the people that are no longer with us. And I don't know about the rest of you, but whenever I go and see the show, and I've just been recently actually, because I'm now coaching somebody in the show, so she got me a ticket and I was felt a bit funny about that, but I went along. But I don't know about you, but that opening moment, the prologue, I think is one of the most beautiful moments of musical theatre, or any theatre, I think. And then the drama of the chandelier going up, and I always think what that must have been like to see that for the very, very first time, because there'd never been anything like it. And whenever I see that opening scene, I just see that very, very first performance with all those people. I see Steve, I see Mary, I see John, I see all those people that are no longer with us, and it's actually a really beautiful thing. I feel more connected to Phantom than any other show I've ever done. I've done loads of shows which I love, and I love them all. But Phantom is just a really, really special place in my heart, for sure. I don't know if that answered the question you were asking, but...
That's lovely. Is there any specific standout memory that you have from rehearsal, or... were you doubling up in chorus as well as playing alternate?
No, I wasn't. So in fact, my experience of rehearsal was very limited because I wasn't really allowed in. So my rehearsal period was being at home on my own, learning it just in case, thank God, because we opened on the Tuesday and I was on the first Saturday, and I didn't even have a wig or a frock or anything.
Oh wow!
So that was interesting. I think the only time
did you literally sort of get thrown on then in the first week?
I had a phone call. I had a phone call on the Saturday morning from our wonderful Uncle Bob West, our company manager, to say Sarah's been told she shouldn't perform. So what we're going to do is we're going to cancel both shows today, and then you're going to rehearse and you're going to go on Monday, and then Sarah will be back on Tuesday, because was it the Royal Gala on the Tuesday with Princess Diana? I think it was, wasn't it? Just before we opened. And so I went into the theatre just thinking, if I have to rehearse all day and then sit at home on Sunday, I'll probably leave the country. So I said, if I can get through the rehearsal, I'll go on tonight. And that was what happened. So they cancelled the matinee because that was the only rehearsal we had. So we went through it on stage, and everybody it was an amazing thing, because it was so early on in the run. And I mean, it's still to this day like an emotional recall of what happened, because nobody even knew the show. And but lots of people, of course, most people were going to see Sarah. And so when you're standing in the wings and that announcement is made,
Oh
due to
gosh.
the position of this Sarah Brightman, and there was a groan and a roar and a sort of mutiny on the Bounty. And of course, the first time Christine opens her mouth, she's absolutely rubbish, because Meg pushes her on. Oh, Christine Daae can sing it so. And the first thing you do is kind of go, think of me fondly. And you know, and until you do the costume change. So all of these people in the audience probably thinking, oh my God, what is it? And who is that person that is replacing Sarah Brightman, because she's absolutely terrible. And then of course there's the magical moment of the theatre. So it became a sort of doubly glorious moment when then suddenly you go on and, you know, just hope you can nail your cadenza and go from there. But it's a night that will stick in my memory forever. And Michael Crawford was so generous. Steve Barton was amazing. Every single person, Mary Miller, all of you who are here now that were there on that night. That, you know, and that's when magic happens, because it's a company. It's not about one person. It's about a company, and that support for each other that just lives with you. So
it's such a glorious and precious memory. I'm you know, I just can't, you know, I can't imagine. It must have been absolutely terrifying, but doubly exciting at the same time.
Yeah, it was. Well, I don't know. It was never exciting. It was always terrifying to be honest, until we got to the end. I think for all of us, because nobody knew where the hell I was going to stand, you know. So I mean, I'm lucky I just didn't end up as one of the candles. It could have all gone very wrong, but no, it was one of my sort of most amazing memories forever. You know, and I was only sorry that my parents weren't able to see that. They came down a little bit later on, because I was then, they thought, well, there's no point in waiting to start your 2 shows a week. You might as well start now. So that's what happened. And Cameron was extremely generous and made sure they came down. So the only person in the audience that was anybody to do with me was my darling, beloved, late agent, Richard Grenville. And I said, Richard, you've got to come, you've got to be there, because if it goes all right, I want to celebrate with you. And if it all goes belly up, at least you can explain to everybody that I haven't had a minute on stage, and I've done my best. So it was lovely that he was there.
Oh, fabulous. Oh, thank you for that. Lynn, do you want to tell your beginnings of your connection with the show and how you got started with it?
Yeah, of course. Well, I remember the moment that Claire is talking about. I remember, and it's actually one of the stories, because of that, exactly what Claire was saying, is that when you're recreating that moment of Think of Me, you have to be like, they have to be really nervous at the beginning. And I always tell the Claire Moore story about how she was thrown on with no rehearsals, and it was real life, and how it gave all of us that were watching it on that day, it gave us all goosebumps. And still, when I think about it, I remember the goosebumps as she sang, as suddenly her voice, when they're far away and free, and suddenly the voice opens up, it gave us all goosebumps, because it felt very real for her, because obviously she had been thrown on without any rehearsals. But anyway, my story was, I was an original ballet girl, and I did I think about 5 or 6 auditions with Jilly. And actually the first person that took the first ballet audition, Jimmy will remember, is our late associate director, which was Jeff Ferris. And he actually took the first dance audition that I did with a random girl who I've never seen connected with the Phantom since, but she was assisting him. And there were so many dancers, obviously, that wanted to be part of the show, that they were having to be quite ruthless, and they set sort of on shame-ons, and then they were saying, come back tomorrow, thank you very much, or whatever. And fortunately I was a come back tomorrow, and I think I did about 6 different auditions. I think in the 3rd audition I eventually met Jilly, and Jilly had a slight connection with me through Arts Ed, where I trained, and she used to come into the school when we were students and judge a cup that we used to do at the end of each year. So I sort of knew her, she knew me vaguely. But anyway, and also her assistant at the time was a lady called Annie Allen, who also I had been in a ballet company with. So I had a sort of connection with her, which I think helped sort of ease the path, because there was so many people. And eventually we ended up with about 12 of us. And as Claire was saying, there was no casting directors. And I remember going through all the dance auditions, and at the very end of, I think, about my 5th audition, Gilly said to me, "Darling, the job's yours," she whispered. And I was like, "Oh, that's fantastic, thank you." And then I got a phone call from Cameron's office asking me to go down to sing. And I remember saying, "I think there must be some mistake. I already have the job." And they were like, "Oh, no, you need to come and sing." Well, I thought, well, that's it then. Because I can't sing for toffee. So I then had to go and sing, which was a complete and utter nightmare for me. And I remember getting onto the stage and I sang "All I Want Is a Room Somewhere," and I actually did want to actually go into another room somewhere and not sing for anyone, but it was terrible. And when I walked out, the lovely stage management, whoever was on stage management at the time, said to me, "We've heard worse." And I wasn't quite sure whether that was a compliment or whether it was
inspiring then.
Yeah, it was like, oh, okay. But anyway, fortunately I got through that. And then my final audition, I was just about to sing, and we had Hal Prince, Andrew Lloyd Webber, and I kept thinking of Andrew Lloyd Webber and Hal Prince and all the people they must have heard sing in the past. And I thought, now they're going to hear me, how dreadful. But anyway, somehow I got through it. And whilst I was singing, they were having a tea break. And in those days, it didn't come in a small, paper cup. It came in proper cups and saucers. So there was cups being rattled around and put on the table. And all I want is a rumbling through this awful song. Anyway, eventually, fortunately, there must have been 3 other people in the room who were worse than me, because I managed to get through. But and as I say, I think I was very fortunate, and it changed my life completely for me, and it became a very important part of my life for 34, 35 years.
Do you have any particular memory from the rehearsal process? Because I seem to remember hearing that didn't Hal only like to rehearse in the mornings or something, and he'd take the afternoon off.
Yeah. Well, the dancers were very much, we were rehearsed separately from the rest of the cast. We obviously, in the scenes that were like Masquerade and Hannibal, we were together, but for everything else, we were sort of in another room somewhere doing work. And there wasn't originally, I seem to remember, there wasn't originally a ballet Il Muto, and she'd obviously auditioned us quite extensively to do that. And most of the original cast, we'd all come from various different ballet companies, and had quite a good career as a classical dancer. And I think Gilly was quite embarrassed the fact that there wasn't very much for us to do. So she wanted Andrew to give us a ballet so that we could have our own moment. And she would come racing into the studio and say, "We've got 8 bars, we've got 16 bars, we have 32 bars." So, and suddenly we had the ballet Il Muto, which was our ballet. But I think Gilly fought very, very hard for us to get that. I think if it was left to Cameron and Andrew, the ballet would not be in the show. But she did fight very hard for us to have that moment. So for us, and I think one of the big things for me as well is we had a rehearsal one time, and things hadn't been going very, very, very well, and Andrew didn't like what Gilly had done in the Masquerade, and so we were sent off to the Royal Opera House, where we were rehearsing till about 10 o'clock at night. And eventually Andrew came in and saw the rehearsal, saw what we had done, and decided he liked it, and so therefore we could continue with it. But so that for me was a very dramatic moment. I'd never been involved in any musical in my life before, and in a ballet company, you very much do as you're told. If you're told to go and stand on B, you stand on B. If you go and stand on C. So in a musical theatre, the dancers and everybody in the company seemed to have a lot more say. And I found this quite amazing, that people were saying, "I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, I'll only do this." And I was like, "I'll do whatever you want me to do. I just want to be here." So it was quite an eye-opener to experience something different. Yeah.
Do you have any memory of like the opening night or that first show week, like Claire, with Claire going on and
oh yeah, I mean, as I say, that's one of my favorite stories, is to tell the Claremore story about the opening night. I think for us, we were all a little bit, you know, when you just sort of look back at your life over 35 years and you think, if I could just go back to that night and try and remember the details of that night, because it didn't seem that important at the time. And you know, the night before the opening night, of course, we had Princess Diana came in to see the show, and I think for us that was quite a lovely night, because of course Princess Diana was very interested in ballet, and one of our the ladies that was in our ensemble had been in a ballet company called London City Ballet, which Princess Diana was a patron of, so she knew her. So she had walked over to the dancers and spent quite a lot of time talking to us, which I think was had surprised the sort of Cameron and Andrew, because they hadn't expected Lady Diana to take such an interest in the dance of the show, the dancing in the show, but she did. So of course for us that was we felt very proud that she had picked us out. So there was that, and as I say, I would love to go back and try and remember the details of that night, but it all sort of went in a bit of a blur, really. But all I know is I loved every moment of it and the excitement of it, and I'm just forever grateful for the fact that I had the opportunity to be there.
Yeah, there seemed to have been a lot of crazy things going on, sort of experiments and what have you, with in the rehearsals in the theatre. There's the story of the doves, and there was a mechanical horse at one point.
Yeah.
It must have. It sounds like there was a lot of mad toings and froings with
yeah.
scenery
and I mean,
and
obviously,
stuff.
Stuart and Mark would sort of would tell you that when it comes to anything technical like that, they rehearse all those things technically with the show without us. We don't really get involved in any of those. So I have a feeling technically a lot of those things were put into the show, and they ran them before we actually even appeared.
Yeah.
You know, appeared in the picture. So I think a lot of it, you know, like the horse, I think they were and the pigeons and the doves, they were long gone before we appeared. But of course, so for us they were stories too, like everybody else, they're stories that we were told. I do know that up on the travelator they had like little candle tracks. So I don't know if at some point they were going to have candles up on the travelator, and possibly deemed that might be too dangerous, or not possible, I don't know. But there were, you know, lots of technical issues, I'm sure, with the show that, as I say, we weren't privy to.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
how is it going from being in the chorus and then taking over as you know, keeping the show in check regarding the dancing within the show? How did that come about for you?
Well, actually, Jimmy played a big part in that. The lady that used to do it before me was a lady called Patricia Merron, and she still looks after the shows that go out into Europe and to Asia. And for many years, she's been part of that. And she was asked to go to Stockholm, I think in about maybe the second or third year of the show. And I was pregnant at the time, and with my daughter, and they asked me to look after the show while she was not there, whilst I was pregnant, because obviously I couldn't perform. And in those days, you only got 3 months for maternity. So I was only, if I didn't come back within the 3 months, I would lose my job in the show. Well, of course, as a dancer, you know, by the time I was six and a half months, I looked like, you know, I was quite big, and therefore I couldn't perform in the show. So to be asked to then look after the show and help look after the show was a huge privilege. So that was the start of my journey. And then when Patty eventually left the show, Jimmy asked if I would, and Jeff asked if I would then take over looking after the dancing of the show. But I was still performing in the show as well at that time. So I was still in the show and then looking after the dancing. And eventually I became resident choreographer, and then I looked after all the choreography in the show, all the blocking of the show, you know, managers, Don all that sort of thing as well. So over the years, my job sort of just got bigger and bigger. But again, I felt I loved it, and you know, I loved working with people, and that's what made my job such a joy to do, was working with so many talented people, and watching them grow and perform over, you know, as they came through the audition door to how they then went out of it at the end after 2 years of performing was huge to watch that journey. And I felt very lucky. I've worked with some wonderful, wonderful people.
I can imagine what wonderful memories you must have over those years, and
definitely.
like you say, seeing people come and go and start in one place and go, you know, develop a career, you know, and swing.
That's it. As Jimmy will tell you, it's wonderful to be a very small part of someone's journey with the roles. I worked very briefly with Claire when she was going to come back and be Carlotta for us in the show, which is a great shame she never did that, because I think she'd been brilliant at it. But it's wonderful to work with people on their journeys and to talk about the show. And the more, it's one of those sort of shows, there's so many layers to it, so many different ways you can go with it, that it's really interesting to hear other people's ideas, and then even after 20-30 years working in a show, you can still come at something from a completely different angle because somebody else has. So then you're like, oh yeah, okay, we could do this. It's as I say, it's a wonderful show to work on.
Oh, thank you for sharing those memories with us, Lynn. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Moving swiftly on to Jimmy. Come on, Jimmy. Let's hear how what's your story?
Am I on? Yeah.
You're on, Jimmy.
I want to say, first of all, before I tell you my story, I'll never forget that first performance when Claire came on. And I don't mind telling you, at first, I'm standing in my Lion Man outfit, and the sort of slightly off center at the back, and thinking, who the hell is that? Because I'd hardly seen her. So having said that, you'll understand how gobsmacked I was when we got through the show, scene after scene at the end, and I just hadn't a clue where it came from. It was just incredible. I'll never forget it for that. I was reliving that as both you and Lynn were telling it, and it was just incredible. I couldn't understand how anybody could have got through all of that and never entered any of the rehearsal room, because that is a real fact. There's so much that you could do. She mentioned maybe becoming a candle. She could have candles up her backside any given moment. She could have fallen through a trap in the door. Something could have dropped on her head. It was just amazing, and I won't ever forget it. But anyway, how did I get involved in the show? Well, I was doing that year of my audition, I was playing Leporello and Don Giovanni. They are now called the English Touring Opera, but at that time it was Opera 80. It was about I don't know what year it would be. But anyway, I was touring with that. And I had about 3 or 4 weeks off at Christmas. And my sister-in-law brought in the stage, said, oh, they're auditioning for Evita in Manchester. And I phoned, discovered it was the last day of auditions the next day. But they said I could come along, and I went along. And 4 auditions later, when I was singing for Hal Prince for the role of Majesty, singing on this Night of 1,000 Stars, he came right down. It was the Prince Edward Theatre, and he came right down to the front and he said, "Want to have a wee chat? I'm about to direct something called The Phantom of the Opera. You may have heard about it." And of course, I hadn't. I came from the opera world. And he said, "I'd like you to come back tomorrow and sing for a few friends of mine if you could." And I think I was in Swindon at the time. And I said, "Yeah, sure, of course." He said, "But don't sing that, sing some opera." So I came back the next day and sang the Largo Factotum from the Barber Seville, and discovered that there was Andrew and Cameron and Gillian and Richard Stilgo and Charles Hart and all these people. I hadn't a clue who these people were, but I did my bit of opera. And shortly after that, I was given the roles of Donatello and Paserino. Now, I'll jump swiftly to the first day, because I know you're going to ask me if I've got any memories. And they gave out the scripts and the scores, and I'm looking through it to see where Donatello and Paserino are. They weren't there. And I thought, shit, what am I doing here? I'm sorry, people who are going to see this, I've just used a bad word, but I like that word. Anyway, no Donatello, no, I was cast as Don Nero and Leporello. They weren't there. And you know what, I've jumped the gun. They changed the names by the time it went to print, but didn't tell me. I was still expecting to say Don Nero and Leporello. So I sat and sweated for quite a wee bit till someone explained that these were the two roles, and I had these two roles in the Don Juan scene and the Il Muto scene. That's one of my early memories. I also remember Cameron initiating that talk around the circle that everybody gives at a new show. Although there were so many of us that we weren't in circle, we were in rows. Cameron started off, he said, "I'm Cameron McIntosh, I'm the producer, and I'm saving up for the Black & Decker for the tour." Everybody erupted into hilarious laughter because Hal had just done a model show and a talk through the model with Maria, and was talking about this chandelier that would come to life, rise up over the audience, go up to the stage, and come crashing down onto the stage at the end of the first act, and all these candles that were going to come out the floor and grow into candelabra, etc., etc., etc. And the idea of a tour just made everybody erupt into hilarious disbelief. And of course, all these years later, and it still seems to be going out, and they find a way of doing it, and so on. But there you are. That's how I got involved in the beginning. Fond memories too, many fond memories. I'll maybe just say that perhaps it's interesting that Lynn and Claire are here, because my thrill was, as I mentioned earlier, when Michael was ill. Poor Steve Barton had done his first performance and had ripped all the ligaments in his leg going down the trapdoor, and Michael was in hospital, and then there was me, and as the second understudy, and like Claire, I hadn't really had any rehearsals. I didn't actually have the cover to begin with. I discovered from a lovely chap called David Devan, who's no longer with us, who was one of the fops. And I can remember on the opening night, David and I sat on the pavement in a wee cafe in Lower Regent Street having a coffee after whatever rehearsals we'd done. And we were just gathering our thoughts and having a coffee before we went round. And David said, well, after opening night, it's the cast recording. And I said, what's that? I hadn't a clue about that. And of course, later on, we went and did this big original cast recording. So that's where I can still remember sitting there with David. It seems such a long time ago now. I was going to tell you something else, but I'm a bit geriatric now and I've totally forgotten what my thread was. Oh no, I know what I was going to tell you. When I was first phoned that I was going to be on for Michael, and I thought, right, okay, I had learned it all and watched Michael. Well, I hadn't had any rehearsals. The only thing I'd rehearsed was that the journey on the boat. One of the deputy stage managers was learning to drive the boat remotely from the wings through the candles, and one of them said to me the night before, "We're doing a session on the boat. Do you want to come in and ride it tomorrow for us, Jimmy?" And I said, "Yes, sure." So I came in and rode the boat, and that was the only bit I'd rehearsed. But Jeff Ferris, on the day that I was going to go on, I think it might have been a Thursday night, they tried to find Claire, who was playing Christine by this time. It was just into the 7th month. Sarah had left and Claire had taken over. And Rebecca Kane was doing Claire's original place as the alternate. And they found her, and we started off doing a wee bit of rehearsal. And it transpired after about maybe half an hour or something. Claire walked in straight from Sainsbury's. She'd been in the queue at Sainsbury's and they'd rung her, and she came running in. And we went through the rest of the scenes. And of course, like Claire, I had no costume or anything. I was wearing Michael's makeup, his costume, and it all fitted except for the fact they had to cut about 2 inches off the trousers at the bottom because he was that bit taller. And what problem did that lead to? Well, it led to the fact that Claire is actually about the same height as me. And you know what she did? She said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. When we get into the dressing room scene, I won't change out of the ballet flats into my court heels, which I'm sure were much easier to walk in. She said, I'll keep the ballet shoes on. And she kept the ballet shoes on right through the first Lear scene, so I wouldn't look like Jimmy Cranky or something, you know, looking up her nose. Bless her for that. I must say, within a day, they had found me some lifts to put in my boots, and it gave me that just a bit more height to make it a bit more presentable. But I'll never forget Mary Miller watching me come down for my first curtain call. And she said I walked down the stage at this angle because of the lifts in my shoe, and it highly amused her. Bless her, she's not with us any longer either. Yeah, we could talk forever on this, and I think I should shut up now and give someone.
Oh no, you carry on, James. You share whatever memories you want to with us.
But it was great. I mean, the only other thing I'll tell you that I remember that was special for me, shortly after I had been on for the first time, and I remember that first time I think it was about 3.5 weeks till Michael got back. And then he came back, and I did a matinee and an evening show for a couple of weeks till he was fit to do them all again. But the first time Hal came over, I got a rehearsal with him, and that was really special. I got a whole morning with him. And Mark, I think you might have been there. And no, I'll tell you, it wasn't. It was that lovely stage manager, Alan Hatton, who started it all off. And I knew Alan from my Scottish Opera days. It was Alan. And we had a power cut, and we were sat on the stage, and he said, "Sorry, Hal, I've got no light. Would you like to go to the Circle Bar?" And he said, "No, tell you what, we'll just sit here." We were in the dark. There was a wee bit of light coming in from somewhere. Might have been the doors outside or something. He said, "This is a lovely atmosphere to talk about it." And we sat there in the stage for about 20 minutes or so till they got the lights going. And it was really focused. And I remember him talking to me particularly about putting the hand up to the face once Christine removes the mask. And he was just describing this reaction, how spontaneous it must be and so on. And I remember saying, "Oh, it sounds like you're saying the hand should go to the face a bit like blood coming to a wound." And he said, "Exactly right." And I've never forgotten that. I think we sort of clicked then. And of course, I can't remember the rest of what happened at the rehearsal, but he talked me through the show and we did a couple of wee bits. But that was special. I got a half hour as the second understudy with him. So that was really special. But there we go.
Lovely. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you for that, Jimmy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ellen, do you want to tell your story of how you got started with the show, Ellen? You need to unmute yourself, lovey.
There we are.
There you go, Ellen.
I could follow these three, my goodness, the three originals. Now, when I came into the show, of course, I had worked with Jim in Scottish Opera, and Claire and I, if I remember correctly, had just done Born Again at Chichester. So I knew Claire. And of course, they had both left the show, but I knew they had been in it. And it was, I mean, it was an iconic show in the West End at that time. But I had never seen it. So I remember the first time I auditioned and the girl whose part I was up for, she didn't leave. So that I was asked back to audition again. I think it was the following year. And I remember being in the Royal Room off stage left, but all these kids, they were all about 17, 18. And I thought, I wonder what I'm here for. And it was to audition for Christine. Now I was on there kicking the backside off of 40. And I thought, and in those days, they didn't employ 40-year-old Christines. I don't know about now. But anyway, obviously it was a mistake that I had been called in. But I can't remember if I sang for them or not, or if I said to somebody, I think this is a mistake. But anyway, the following year I did audition and I got in. Well, no, I auditioned, and I think I had done 2 auditions, and I was offered, to watch the show. And I had never seen the show. And I remember I watched it from the sound desk, and I didn't know what to expect, and it was just like nothing I'd ever seen before. Of course, I'd worked with Maria Bjornsson, as Jimmy had in Scottish Opera, so I knew Maria. But the experience that the auction, the dead silence of the auction, and then, the transformation into Hannibal, oh my goodness, and then of course this phantom scene with them, it was just incredible. I just sat there like, oh, I've got to get into this show. I just loved it, and I've always loved it since I did get in. I sang opera, yeah. I sang the Habanera. I think my go-to, as Jim knows, Habanera, and I think I sang Liu's aria from Turandot. I can't remember, but anyway, yeah. And I got in, and I was fortunate that the year I get in, Peter Land, was playing Andre. So even though it was about 5 years into the show, I was lucky enough to be put in by Gillian Lynn, which was a great experience because, of course, Peter was her husband, and so it was just amazing, you know, and I loved it. And rehearsing the covers that I got was great. And I remember in those days, I remember Philip Griffiths, who was in the show for even longer than me. It took him 5 years to get on for Piangi. He was a second cover Piangi, and I was the second cover Geri. And it was 2.5 years before I actually got on for it. Well, you know, I think in those days people just didn't go off. They went on with blinking fractured feet and everything. But Mike was the RAL on my first performance as Geri. And you had to put your skirt over your arm going up the travelator. But for some reason, it kept falling off with me. So I stuck it in my pants. I used to take the Geri skirt and stick it in my pants, this big lump. Come up. And like Claire and Jim were saying, I don't remember getting a lot of rehearsals on the travelator. So I didn't realise you had to go up to the second travelator. So anyway, I pulled the skirt out of my pants at the first travelator and climbed on. Oh, no, I went to go on, and Mike says to me, "It's higher, the next one up." Well, of course, the skirt was out. So I ended up climbing up the ladder on the skirt. And by the time I got to the second travelator, I was on my hands and knees. I was crawling on like that. I remember it just to sing "Your Hand at the Level of Your Eyes," and I was on my hands and knees. I don't know if Mike remembers that, but it was a very, very nerve-wracking experience, I'll tell you. There are many other faux pas that I made during the 28 years, I can tell you. But I would say that's my experience of the first little while and got on for you.
That's wonderful, so funny. It sounds like you definitely had a memorable time on the show then.
Oh yeah, oh golly, yeah. I could tell you another couple of things, as I say, but at the time the ballet girl wig was hanging from my Geri button. One of the poor ballet girls, she hadn't tipped her wig on tight enough. Fiona, and I turned around, Fiona standing in her wig cap, and her wig's hanging from my button. Oh God, she was like that. She's like,
oh, fantastic!
Live performance, great.
Oh gosh, thanks for that. Moving on to Mike there. If you could tell us your how you got started and what your first few memories are of doing the show, please.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Mike. Thank
Lovely.
you.
Well, I joined the show originally in the original Manchester production, which of course did about a couple of years there, and as Raoul. But I was in Les Mis whilst in Manchester, just up the road.
I remember I was working at the Palace when you were in.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah,
with my curly hair, with my long.
Yes, yeah,
curly hair,
yeah. With Jeff Layton and Ria. Yeah.
My David Essex haircut. Yeah, so I was going back and forth to London, coming back then for the evening show, you know, see if it was a matinee day or, you know, in midweek. And I did 5 auditions for Hal, which was wonderful. You know, it was great. It was called me about 5 times. So it was actually nice getting on the train, getting down, and then consequently, when I got the role, I worked with Hal, with Arthur Masella as well, and Gillian Lynn, which was something else. You know, I mean, we're all blessed, aren't we, to work with such legends like that, because they do leave such an impression on us. And like I said earlier, I mean, I actually was on the second year of Manchester. Dave had been there for a year, Dave Willits, and yeah, you know, there was, as I say, it was the second year that they said, do you want to have a look at this, you know, Phantom cover? It's playing Raoul, but, you know, but Cameron said, have a look at it, look at the score, which I did, and I started doing some calls. Right, so I said to him, look, I'm a bit worried about this, really, because I got a feeling I'm second cover. I don't want to like what happened with Claire and Jimmy and things like that, you know. And I'd heard these stories, and I thought, oh my days. So I said, look, let's try and get something. I'll come in for the rehearsals and get things sorted. So 3 weeks later, Tony Pinhorn knocked on my door and said, Mike, I got a question for you. So what's that? I said, could you go on as the Phantom? And I went, you are absolutely, you know, kidding me. It's on Thursday matinee. And I said, I have no mask, I have no clothes, I have nothing. I've only tacked the first act. So anyway, came to it. I said, you're serious, aren't you? You're not winding me up. And he went, no, he's come in, he's cracking on his Fs, he ain't going on. So I went, guess we better do it. And I walked down and he said, so what were you going to do about the second act? I said, no, we'll worry about that in the interval. And I literally tacked the second act in the interval, which was crazy, right? But I remember not feeling too well that day, but then I suddenly woke up, and then suddenly it's and in this labyrinth you're going through the it was bizarre. It was the most bizarre but wonderful experience, and consequently I did quite a few after that. And then on to London, meeting the lovely Madge and Ellen. Oh, Danny boy, the pipe. Yeah, it's infamous. It's wonderful, isn't it? It's such a great. I was thinking of Alan Jackson and Danny Boy. There's only one person to do that. And I'd, of course, I had quite a few children born during the Phantom days, the Phantom children, the Les Mis kids. You know, it's holds a lot of wonderful memories for me. But I think this has got to be the most embarrassing one on the stage. And it's the end of, I don't know if you remember, Ellen, I don't know if you remember this. Madge, I don't know if you remember it. I know Callum MacLeod certainly does, because he was on the stick that night. Richard, my dresser, right, he'd left my water bottle. I think I left it by the lift or something. He's always meticulous, you know, never forgot anything. But this day, and you know how thirsty you get, all that stuff on your face. I'm obviously doing the Phantom, and I said, "My water," and he went, "Oh shit. This must be left up that right." I said, go into the bar, just go into the bar and grab, do you know when people do the orders and they leave them on the shelves? I said, just grab anything. I'm parched. So he got a bottle of fizzy water, which I necked, constantly, you know, threw it back. When I come to the end of the scene, I had this pain. I think, you alone can make my song take flight, help me make the music of that. And the pain shot there, and I thought, no, I've got to have a moment here just to settle. So I thought, if I just exhale some air gently, I'll be all right. So it's helped me make the music of well, when I did that, this massive, you know, the high the mics are, this massive burp went all the way through the audience because the mics are up so high. And it's like, and then it's, no. Well, the strings are finished. They're going, it's the most awful sound I've ever heard in my life. And the horns, the reeds, and everything. Callum is really falling off his podium. I mean, it's just literally the most. And do you know what they did after it finished? No, the audience laughed. Oh, literally, rather than that big, you know, what a marvelous scene. They're like, and people are laughing. It was the most embarrassing, the most. I don't know if I've ever got over that actually, but that was good. But no, it was a
great story though.
It's the original, right? It's
original,
yeah. You know,
no one else can claim it.
but working with such great people, and like you say, I mean, the legend that is Jeff Ferris. You know, I mean. The characters that existed. I mean, I always, people say, what was it like? They asked me, what was it like back then? I said, well, for me, it was, I think, the most golden time of musical theatre. You certainly were in that real golden time. And I feel blessed for that. And certainly the characters we met, the legends like Hal and Jilly and all that. But I remember Jeff, but actually I've got some, not a lot of people know this, but after I think I'd finished, I finished Phantom, I'd done Les Mis, and then I went to China to play Russell Paxton in Lady in the Dark for the premiere out there, right? Because I'd never had any musical at all in China before. It was the first ever. But I was playing Russell Paxton. Now, I'm sure you guys know the role of Russell Paxton, originally played by James Dreyfus.
Oh, right.
Well, I didn't realise, you see. So I think, I thought, Gershwin and Weil, lovely, bit of song and dance, nice. So I opened up the script when I eventually got it, after being paid for the job in advance, after signing the contract and everything. And I opened it up and went, oh my God, it's a proper screamer. You know, I've gone, it's like, so I phoned up all my friends that I said, I'm going to do this. He said, well, just draw on it, you know, drawing experiences. And I actually, in the end, I based it on Jeff. I based on, do you know that thing he used to do with the cigarette when he used to get a little bit perturbed and he'd go, and the cigarette would disappear with one drag, wouldn't it? Like that. Did she now? You know, someone's come in and done so, you know, like I said something. I remember something about it was somebody, I wouldn't mention names, but somebody come in to look over the music and put all the notes back, you know, like this. And he said to me that, and he said, what's happened? What's happened to my row? And I went, what do you mean? He said, well, it's awful. He said, it's gone. Because they'd all put all these things back together. But, you know, I mean, little arty, I mean, literally as perfect. He went, I said, oh, they said the acting was getting in the way. And he went, and he dragged on this cigarette, right, disappeared. I went, the bitch. Like that. Right, that's it. Right, you put it back as it was. You put it, because it's lovely. Put it back as it was. So I got these things, and I actually based the character on him. So I used to do this thing, and then when I used to have a right screaming fit, I used to get the cigarette, light it up, and it became, and then eventually people started to laugh when they saw me do it. So I actually based a lot of that character I did, especially when he had a, you know, I would get it, Jeff was funny, you know, but it was never a serious, you know, sort of tantrum or anything. It was just that sort of thing. I thought, you're right. So I based it on Jeff. And it was hilarious, apparently. It was great. So he's been with me in more ways than one, you know, bless his heart. So, and how, like I say, I don't want to kind of hog the green square. But
oh no, if you've got a story that you want to tell.
But I have to say something. I'll say, well, Madge, Madge, actually, because there was a few turbulent, you know, times, and certainly, if people know my personal life, Madge, you were amazing. The company were amazing. And as Claire has said, I want to reiterate, it's never before, I don't think I've ever experienced it since, a company that embrace people like you do, like you have. And I want to thank you all for that. You know, I've not really had a chance to, but yeah, but I'm gonna go. I'm not, but I am. But it's amazing. On a serious note, I love you guys, and I've just had the most incredible time. And listen, I mean, it's certainly, you know, it's never left me, because everything I do, you know, they say, oh, you can do the Phantom stuff. I always have to do of course, you know, because I've done the role, but it's a blessing, and certainly, you know, paid my mortgage for quite a few years. So I have. I mean, there's so many things that I can think of. And Claire, of course, we didn't work on Phantom, but we did a lot of concerts together, didn't we, with Callum, and I think it was one with Julian Big and a few others, which was delightful, which was lovely. I hope we get a chance to do them again. And Ellen, we did we did those things in Callum's backyard with the Philharmonic. Do you remember the British Philharmonic? And you sang Danny Boy. I think you sang a couple of other operatic pieces as well. So yeah, I think we should all go out in London, and that would be good, wouldn't it? We should get out on the town. would be marvelous. See you all again, and I don't know. I've got so many things I can sort of add to it.
Sounds like we've got a plan to work on in the future, a reunion in the flesh kind of thing.
Do you know what? It would just be terrific. So this is maybe a good little start of it. Could be the catalyst of something major. you know.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Oh, thanks for sharing that with us, Mike. That's
Pleasure. Thank
so
you,
many
everybody.
wonderful stories there and experiences. Moving on to Stewart there. Stewart, hi. You need to unmute yourself, Stewart.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Hello, Stewart.
Hi there.
You want to tell us how you became involved in the show and what led you to lead up to working on Phantom and
Sure.
your experiences and memories that you have?
Well, when I mentioned earlier, it was through Mark Pawsey that I got the job, but I actually, about 3 years before that happened, I was just finishing a show called Radio Times with Tony Slattery, and I had an interview for Phantom. And at the same time, I had an interview for a show called Crazy for You that was coming into town from Broadway. And I ended up getting offered both shows, so I had to make a choice. And my choice at that time was, well, Crazy for You is a nice big new show, whereas Phantom's been around a while. So then I opted for Crazy for You. Did 3 years on Crazy for You. And then when that was coming to an end, and I was thinking, oh, I'm going to have to find myself my next job, out of the blue, I got a phone call from Mark saying they were looking for an ASM and would I be interested in going in for an interview? So of course I was. So went in, had my interview, and thankfully was offered the job. So as I said before, a big debt of gratitude to Mark for putting that my way, because it led to big things in my life. I said, as I said, they wanted an ASM, but the first thing they needed was a book cover for, I can't remember the specific reasons, but the first thing I had to learn was the book. And I'd never actually seen the show before. So there I was on my very first day with Mark, stood in the prompt corner, learning to call the show, having no idea what I was calling, didn't know what was meant to happen, didn't know where the scenery was meant to move to, didn't know what the lighting was meant to do. And on about I think it was my second day, I had to actually call it with Mark hovering over my shoulder. And all I could do really was hope that I was saying the words in the right order and pressing the buttons in the right order. And that all seemed to work. We got so far through, I think it was through about the first half of Act 1 that I managed to call on my first night. So that was my kind of baptism by fire into Phantom. And after that, really, I settled in, learned, first I said, first of all, learnt the book, then learnt one of the wings. And things just went on from there. I settled in very, very quickly felt that I was very comfortable there on the show. Really just like everybody else had said, it's one of those companies, one of those buildings that just embraces people, and felt very, very settled and very happy there. So for all that I'd kind of thought, oh, well, it's an old show, I'll just do a little while and then move on. After a while, I knew that I was going to be there for a good long time. And as people came and went, I was able to move on up through the ranks, from ASM to swing ASM, then to DSM, and then finally up to stage manager. I must have been there, I think, about 5 years by the time I reached stage manager. I'd always been very ambitious and wanted to stage manage a big West End show. And once I got to the position of being the stage manager, I thought to myself, well, what do I do now? Where do I go from here? And I thought, well, I don't want to be one of these people that just kind of achieves what I want to achieve and then go stale or move on and abandon it. I thought, no, I need to stick with this. What I need to do is now, I've proved to myself I can get here. Now I need to prove that I can sustain it. And I think I managed to. I did another 20 years on the show as stage manager, and loved every second of it. It really was just one of those shows it's a thrill to be part of.
I was going to say, you must have, it must have been a lovely company to work for, and for you to want to stay there as long as you did, you must have been, you must have made you really happy being a part of that company.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as everybody so far has said, it just is one of those shows where everybody welcomes you in. You feel part of a family. I mean, people talk about the Phantom family, and that really is based on a truth. There really is, you know, there's something about the show, maybe because it is quite a hard show to do, so it challenges you. So I think everybody appreciates when new people come into the show that they're going to have to work hard to achieve it, to actually manage to do the show. So you kind of embrace everybody, you know. Everybody seems to want to help everybody else, which is a lovely thing. It's, you know, it's
Oh,
really
that's so
not to
lovely
be
to hear that. It really, really is. It really is. Do you have any sort of special stories or memories, or funny stories, in fact, where there's been mishaps that you can remember?
Well, there's a few things. Of course, over the years, lots of things happen. There's one moment I do remember towards the end of the second layer. The Phantom has to. There's a doll of Christine that lies over the throne. He has to pick the doll up and throw it to the floor. And one time, as he did so, the wig got snagged on part of the throne. So instead of her falling to the floor, she ended up hanging by her wig from the side of the throne. So that was, you know, funny enough in its own. But then a little while later, the Phantom and the Christine share a kiss, which is kind of quite a real climactic, pivotal moment in that scene, in fact, in the whole story. And so while the Phantom and Christine were in their embrace, sharing this kiss, the dummy fell out of her wig with a thump and landed on the floor, right in the middle of that moment.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, thanks for sharing that story with us, Stuart, and your experiences. Thank you. We've got a question for Claire here from Rob. Hi, Claire. Rob says, Sir Ian McKellen recently shared a photo of you in the cherry orchard from 1985. He said, what was it like to go from a classic play that I presume was a sellout straight into another blockbuster like Phantom and then Miss Saigon? He said it must have been quite something, really.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it certainly was, because they were so very different, all of those pieces. And I had a year at the National, and in fact, things were done quite differently then, because we didn't really do repertory in the same way that it's done now. Each company, there were about 6 different companies under different directors. So Peter Hall was at the helm of the National Theatre then. And then there was Richard Eyre Company, there were all sorts of things. And I was in Ian McKellen and Edward Petherbridge's company. So we did 4 plays over the year. We did the Duchess of Malfi, and we did The Critic and the Real Inspector Hound. And in fact, Tom Stoppard directed The Real Inspector Hound, his own play, and Sheila Hancock directed The Critic. She was the first female director at the National Theatre as well. So as you were saying about the golden times, Mike, you're dead right. I mean, it was incredible what was happening on the British stage back in the 80s. And then the wonderful Mike Alfreds came in from he was artistic director of the company Shared Experience, and to do the production of the Cherry Orchard. Now, I'd come from a sort of operatic background. My dad was a jazz musician. I'd not had any sort of drama coaching. How I ended up at the National Theatre in itself was just incredible. And I have the wonderful, wonderful Thelma Holt to thank for that. She was just an amazing tour de force at that place, and just said, well, you know, it'd be nice to take a risk, and sort of brought me in. So it was a real, my drama school was at the National Theatre for that year, and then cast as Anya in the Cherry Orchard, which was just incredible. It was a beautiful production, and the way Mike works is, if it's not in the stage directions, then there's a freedom about it. So a lot of the work you do in rehearsals with him is reading and discussing what's not written in the text. So reading between the lines, and lots of character work, lots of improvisation, you know. And I was like, oh my God, hanging on. And it was just the most beautiful, beautiful production to be in. And it was different every night. In fact, he's got a book called Different Every Night. And if you, please read it, because as a performer, there's always something else to find. It was an extraordinary way of working. And I have to say, I think I think that was actually what got me through that very first performance on Phantom, because it taught me some degree of stagecraft and confidence to just be in the moment and live in that moment and try and deliver truthfully, rather than worrying about, oh cracky, I've got to, where do I stand, where do I stand? If you're in the moment, it kind of makes sense. And you know, so that was incredible. And then to go from the National to Phantom, which was just such an incredible family, as you've said, and then to go straight from that into Miss Saigon, again, a very, very different piece, vocally a very different kind of role for me, but another extraordinary show. And I think actually my favourite time of Miss Saigon was when we were still running in the rehearsal room before we moved into the theatre. And I don't know if you all know the show, but the iconic sort of helicopter scene, which then became the iconic helicopter scene and all about the helicopter. And actually what was brilliant about the iconic helicopter scene was that it was about the people, and those kids on stage who'd come from all over the place. I mean, there was you know, literally some of them had come from the paddy field and were sending their money back home every week, and I'm not kidding, and they'd lots of from different walks of life. And that scene without the helicopter, of seeing that moment, I think it was the final run through in the rehearsal room before we moved to the theatre, was just one of the most beautiful pieces of musical theatre I'd ever seen. And it did work fine without the helicopter, as we discovered, because it did work on the night the Queen Mother came, and I thought Cameron was going to have a stroke. But yeah, so three very, very different times, and just all absolutely joyful. But I think just going back to Phantom, and we've talked about the legends of Hal and Chili and the wonderful Jeff and Uncle Bob and all of those people and all the wonderful people backstage in the orchestra, all of that. It really was a sense of family. And we've not yet just talked about Maria Bjornson, and I just want to talk about her very, very quickly, because she was so brilliant. We look at that piece of theatre now and you kind of take it for granted, and she was such a genius. She thought everything three-dimensionally. And I remember her talking to me about when I had a fitting with her, and because I'd just come from the National Theatre, she knew Philip Prowse, who directed The Duchess of Malfi, and she said, oh, Philip Prowse told me I had to look after you. She was so lovely, because she was quite scary, wasn't she? She was quite an intimidating presence, Maria, and she was gorgeous. And I remember her telling me how she chose the fabrics, and a lot of the fabrics were printed to her designs, but she didn't only choose the fabric, she would choose what the fabric content would be, and then how she would layer it with another fabric, because she wasn't just thinking about how it would look if you looked at it, but how it would look under the light. Everything. She just thought about every single minute detail of everything to create that show. And I think almost the design of the show is what makes that musical so amazing. I mean, I know, of course, the music and blah, 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 but the design of that show in a time when technology was not like it is now, 35 years ago. I mean, it was incredible, just incredible. The first time those candles came up, and you remember the audience there was this intake of breath before rapturous applause, and the same at the start of Act 2 with Masquerade, when the curtain came up and you saw this glorious feast of colour. But she was just incredible. But do you remember, Lynn, I know you will, because it would have affected you more than anybody else, Ken Russell came in to do some filming was it with Sarah and Michael, or was it? But anyway, they decided they were going to film a bit from the show, and all this marvellous design wasn't good enough for Ken Russell. No, he had to have real candles. And it was filming during the day, and we had a show that evening, and we came to go on stage, and nobody could stand up because the candles had melted all over the stage. It was honestly like an ice rink. No amount of Coca-Cola on that stage would do anything. There was so I think you all ended up doing everything in bare feet, I think, and everybody else. I mean, I think I kept my ballet flats on for the whole show, because and so anybody who was in the audience that night must have wondered what the hell was going on, because I think just being able to get through any scene without breaking your neck was an achievement. They couldn't get the wax up, and as fast as, you know what it's like, you're trying to scrape wax up, you end up just spreading it out and smoothing it out. So we had this eye shrink, and I think by then, was Michael Ball on by then? I can't remember, because I just think that we would have probably laughed our whole way through the show in fear of not being able to stand up. Because you'll remember that better than me, Lynn, I'm sure.
Oh, is Lynn here? Where, Lynn, do you remember this as well? You need to unmute yourself, Lynn.
Go in. Am I unmuted now? Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
I remember it. Yeah, because we had this long discussion. We started the show and then had this long discussion about how we weren't going to be able to do the ballet, and it was decided we would do it without shoes. And this went on for like 2 or 3 days, didn't it? It just didn't seem to sort of get any better. And so we decided we felt dreadful doing it in flat shoes, but there was just no way we could. And there's one girl in the in the Il Muto scene where they have 4 hoops at the front of the stage, and the girl has to sort of step through the hoops and do a pirouette, and she's literally right, virtually in the orchestra pit. And we just said there was just no way from a health and safety point of view that we could do that in point shoes, so we took them off. But it wasn't a huge, it was very dramatic at the time, and we were all really upset about it. But now we can laugh about it because it probably looks hysterical. Yeah.
Oh gosh, what a brilliant story.
I can't imagine that would ever be allowed to happen anymore. Any naked candles on a stage in that amount anyway. But and how all the acrylic wigs didn't go up anyway. Is baffling. I had completely forgotten this. I don't remember the stage, but I'd forgotten the story as to why the stage was that slippy. So it's good to be reminded.
Oh, wonderful. I'm going to quickly go over to one person I completely forgot, because I've got a few questions coming through, but I forgot to mention Mark Pawsey. Yeah, I completely forgot about you, my dear. I'm so sorry about that.
Don't worry. It's so fascinating listening to everybody. And I would just like to say thank you for this forum, because it's only when you start to talk and reminisce that you realize just how much of an important part Phantom was for all of us. It was life-changing, and theatre is really about opportunity and connectivity. All roads lead to something else, and I think for all of us they have. And I would just like to say that Claire Moore is one of those special people in theatre that is just makes your heart smile. And I'm so glad she's on this. She was one of my first Christines, and she is one of my favorites too. And I think it's that embodiment of spirit and generosity that is part of the Phantom family. And Mike said that it was the golden age, and I really do believe that we were spoiled. Where else do you go that you have a successful show, but all of the creators are invested in it, not invested financially, invested in passion. Having Hal there all the time, he used to hold little note sessions upstairs after, and you just sat there listening to his every word. Jilly would come in and do rehearsals. I have wonderful memories of her coming in and making us she made all the stage management, do all the warm-ups and everything. It was fabulous. It was such an inclusivity. And as Claire talked about Maria, my God, Maria was one of those people that she was there maybe 2 or 3 times a month. She would pop in every cast change. She was invested in every single person, and she was a history keeper. And all of these original cast members are history keepers, and it's so lovely that we're all part of that Phantom family. And I didn't tell you how I came to Phantom. I did the card in Regent's Park Open Air Theatre with Peter Duncan, which was a Cameron show. And that's what I say about opportunity, because I did that. And then suddenly people at Cameron's office went, oh, that's Mark. Now we know Mark. So then literally a month later, I got 3 offers all at once. I was offered Phantom in Manchester, Phantom in London, and Cats in London. So I had to choose. And I had seen Phantom, and it's one of those things that just blew me away. And as a stage manager, seeing something that transports you and you don't know how it's done is wonderful. So getting the chance to call something like that and be a part of that is magnificent. So I remember my first day at Phantom. Stewart tells of me teaching him, but I was taught by the lovely Natalie Wood, and I had 1 week to learn the entire show, which is pretty daunting, a show of that size, especially when you're in the prompt corner and the organ that the Phantom plays is up your backside, and you literally have to contort as you're calling the show. So you know, it's one of those, yeah, it's a very special place and was fabulous for me. So yes, and I have lots of memories and stories to share. Claire, I think, has fabulous stories about wigs coming off. I always remember your wig coming off.
Yeah, it was. Those flipping wigs, that dummy. No, it was at the most dramatic moment in the lair. Do you remember? And I'd had a haircut, and we had a lovely new wiggy assistant who, and often that people are frightened of jabbing the pins in case they hurt you, and I like to feel that it's actually going into my brain, and it had felt a bit sort of loose, but you get on with it and you forget all about it. But in the show, you come on for the final lair scene in the bridal dress, and then the Phantom sticks the veil on you, and you're down on the floor having this amazing dramatic moment. The tears I might have shed for your dark fate grow cold and turn to tears of hate. Oh my God, and there was my wig in my hand as well as my veil. So I'm there looking like a Smurf on stage. And just thought, I'm just going to disappear. So I ran off into the wings, got somebody to give me a hairpin, and just stuck the whole thing back on with one hairpin. It was probably on back to front, I don't know. I mean, but yeah, honestly, those, oh. In fact, Lynn, do you remember? I was going to say, yeah. Do you remember the time when you dragged me out of to get in the boat with Michael? Yeah, I thought it was you. Yeah. So, nowadays, most characters will wear 2 microphones for safety, because then if one goes wrong, you've got another one. But we didn't then, because we'd only just gone from throat mics to head mics. Really, it was quite new technology, and I was coming. What happened just before it? It's just before coming out of the Don Juan, wasn't it? Why? Yeah, and all of that. And as I came off, the sound guys grabbed me and said, "Your mic's gone down." And of course, there was no time then. So I said, what do we do? And it was you I grabbed hold of. And what was hilarious, though, you were there in a blonde wig as well. I was just about to go. I just gave you my clothes, didn't I? I said, Lynn, put this on, get in the boat with Michael. I have to do a microphone change. And I think you said it was the most nervous you've ever been. You were terrified of just being on the boat and not even having to do anything. Yeah, because Michael said, whatever you do, don't look at me. So I was like, right, okay. So this heap of cloak in the thing, and he grabs her head at one point, and I was like, just don't look at him. Yeah, while they did the mic change. Yeah, I thought it was you. Yeah, it was. Yeah, all sorts of things. You'd always have a malfunction, you know. I stood up one time from the chair in the second managers, only to realise that as I'd been sitting down, my skirt had unhooked itself. So when I stood up and started walking, and it was with Michael Ball, so there was no going back with that, that as I was moving, my skirt was practically around my knees. And of course, he was terrible because he would just laugh at anything. I at least could hide behind my wig. Yeah, there was a time when there was a kerfuffle in the stalls, and it turned out that somebody had been quite sick, which was terrible, really. Sorry for a minute. That was during the second manager scene in that Christine, don't think that I don't care. It was all that lovely moment, just leading into the next big grand thing. And we found out that somebody had not only been very, very sick, but they'd lost their false teeth in the process.
Oh no.
And one of the poor ushers had to go ferreting through to find them. And so we came on stage the following day, and of course nothing happened. It was completely uneventful, but we got to that moment and we just both had the same thought at the same time, Michael and I. And in fact, I think we got to the stage. I think we probably went down in the book for naughty behaviour, but we had to end up calling a rehearsal so that we could just get the laugh out of the way, and then we could move on. Because you know when you're not supposed to laugh at something, and it just builds up. It was like a pressure cooker, and all we could just see when we got to that moment, we could just envisage this poor man or lady and their false teeth disappearing, God knows to where. And I was, I would always just dramatically swing my head so that I could hide behind my wig, and Michael would be going, "You absolute cow," because he had to just face the music. But no, we had some fun old times. Dave Willits and I had we used to do Christmas crackers and all that, and we had this terrible ring. We called it the blue ring because it was a blue ring, but it was a blue ring out of a cracker. And we ended up with this subtle thing that nobody would know but us, which is what I like about that, because I don't like shaving foam in shoes, and I don't like silly things on stage, but clever things where nobody knows and something. And we have this blue ring, and every now and again we would have a thing that we'd have to get it from me to him or from him to me without anybody knowing, so it would appear strategically placed. And one night I went on at the end, for Christine, I love you, and in my hand, completely hidden, was the blue ring. So I think actually, I think Dave probably still has the blue ring. I'm sorry he's not here now to ask what happened to it. Valuable thing. But I no, so many happy memories of wonderful people that all the people that can't be here. We've lost Mary and John and David and so many people, but they're always here, aren't they? And Jeff, of course, and Bob, and
this is one of the reasons we're wanting to do this is for you to be able to tell your stories and those of others that's unfortunately as you say aren't with us anymore. And it's so I think it's so important that we have this kind of living library of stories from you all for future for those for kids in the future, because it's quite commonplace on Broadway. They've been doing this kind of thing for years, and it's just one of those things that we kind of thought, wow, should we do this? We just on a whim. Let's try and get a chat with Ria Jones, shall we? We've heard she likes a bit of a chin wag, and of course she does, and she did, and then it was kind of this. Let's see where we can go with this. And of course, the Cats anniversary was this year, the big 40th there for that, and then obviously the 35th anniversary for this. So it was like, let's mark the occasion, by trying to do something a little bit special and reuniting people and getting your stories there recorded forever. So I do want to say thank you to you all for joining us today before we move on. And
we have in addition to great things, we also have some really good questions pouring in from our lovely audience members. And so I wanted to jump in with some of that. And my apologies, because I have a couple of different screens going here. So John, if I ask a question that's already been covered, just tell me, we'll go on to the next one, okay?
Okay, right.
But I think I got it straight. So first of all, I had some questions from our co-moderator, Jeffrey Smith in Hickory, North Carolina. I think North Carolina. He had some questions for Claire. So in no particular order, let me fire these at you and you can answer whichever you like or as much as you like. So Jeff's questions were about which vocals were pre-recorded. Did you ever have any mishaps with the set or the boat? Did you have any dance or ballet background before you came to the show?
You only need to see my performance to know that that answer is no.
I don't know what you mean.
But thank you for even asking the question. I think that's my favourite question ever, that you might think I could have. That's great. Carry on.
That's acting, right? That's acting.
Bluffing. But you know, with Jilly there to guide you, you could get away with anything. So yeah,
exactly. And his most important question, I think, is he mentioned that you did a different cadenza than Sarah when you were alternating, and he wondered how you came up with it and sort of how it was different.
Well, it was completely different because Sarah's was it was a sort of bum 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 one, and I think. Well, my biggest mistake actually in writing that cadenza was not agreeing to a royalty of 1 penny for every time it was sung. I would be a very wealthy woman now. But a cadenza is something that suits the usually soprano, but not always, but the singer who is performing that particular aria, and it differs with every person would bring their own sort of cadenza, and so I felt that wasn't a cadenza that suited me, and maybe we could come up with something that did. And so David Caddick, who was the musical supervisor at the time, and I went into a little room at the top of the Palace Theatre to sort of work things out, and I'd kind of been thinking and saying I thought it might be really nice to have a sort of more runny thing and put a few more ornaments in and so that was how it came about, and it just sort of suited me. And it was nice that, you know, we were allowed to be individual. You know, you're working within a framework of what a character is, but our performances were completely different, you know, which was lovely to be allowed to do that. And so that was how that came about. And I love it when I get asked to coach. I get asked to coach Christine's quite often, and even in the audition, and they get sent to me to work on the cadenza, and I always feel really chuffed about that. Actually, it's a great joy to be able to pass that on, and hear somebody else singing something that, you know, it's only a little bit of something that you contributed to the show, but it's a special moment. And yeah, so that was how that came about. And what was the thing? Mishaps? Well, there are lots of stories I probably can't tell.
Tell them.
This is being recorded and it's out there forever.
Exactly. Although we do have the ability to edit, so if something happens and you know you need us to edit something, you can always let us know.
Yeah, I did get a note once. Jimmy will remember this. I did get a note once from somebody, I can't imagine who it could have been, to say that I was blinking during this person's performance of Music of the Night, and I had to remember that I was in a trance because I was centre stage and he was stuck stage left behind the organ, and had definitely noticed that I was blinking, and I remember thinking, I said, oh yeah, I remember now, I had something stuck in my contact lens. Yeah, quite right. So from then on, I'd be aware it was like this burning on my left of somebody checking if I was blinking or not, and then as soon as I could feel this person look away, I'd have to get my blinks in quickly. But no, and lots and lots of fun things, but actually more gorgeous things than bad things, for sure. Mishaps with the boat. I don't know where you could have got that idea from. Many mishaps with the boat, because, you know, it was just this little box that somebody was operating like a remote control toy car with this great big thing that quite often we'd end up sort of hanging. It was a bit like the Italian Job, where we'd be hanging with this gondola over the pit with the musicians hoping for the best. Michael would sometimes say to me, we can't get out, because if we'd got out, the thing would have tipped over. I mean, and sometimes he would say, move back a bit, and sit, and we try and counterbalance it, and he would get out and grab hold of the boat and drag it round, and walk very unglamorously, dragging the boat with me in it off stage, because that was the only way. So that, I think that's happened in every incarnation of the show. I've no idea how it's done now, whether it's done in the same way or whether technology has improved. But of course, you say it's improved, but it's never going to have that charm about it, like the real thing. So lovely about you doing this tonight, John, is that, you know, it is 35 years, and although it's open again, which is marvellous that it is open again, it will never be the brilliant original, in my opinion.
That's true.
It's brilliant. It's
Yeah.
the next phase of being brilliant, and that's fine. We have no custody over these things, but we had the brilliant original, and that came to the end in 2020, as far as I'm concerned. And what was the other question? Sorry, my dog's come out.
Not at all. The other question from Jeff was about the if there was any pre-recorded vocals, or which ones were pre-recorded.
Yeah, there were, because the Phantom of the Opera is known to be recorded. Right. But I have to, but also because physically it's a difficult thing, singing all that kind of stuff when you're going up 3 floors of Labyrinth in Unite. So, but in all my time when I was there with Michael, I sang it live every single performance, every single time. And the minute he left, I never did it live again. Oh no, I'm lying. Just Dave Willits and I would occasionally say, should we do it live tonight? And there would be this free song, you know, of let's do it live. And we'd send a message off to the sound desk and go, we're going to do it, because it's fun to do it. So it was a recorded performance, really, but it was still people singing it, you know. You know, there was very little on track, really. You know, some of the big musical stuff at the beginning, when the candelabra goes out and all of that, just to get that sound effect. But I think in terms of the musicality and the portrayal of the music within the show, it was very honest. You know, all the singing was real, even that little bit, and that was the only bit that was vocally tracked, was still that person or those people singing it, you know,
right,
for real, and for, you know, for reasons of difficulty, was decided that it would be a good idea, because also it's knackering. It's a big old thing. It's a massive thing, particularly for Christine, because you know, if you're off stage, you're getting changed to come back on, really, and it's a very, very rangy role. You wouldn't find a role like that in proper, as we might say, or legit opera, using a soprano's voice right down in the lower regions of a range, because a soprano wouldn't do that, and going right up to a top E, as it is at the end of Phantom. So that was the only bit that was tracked. But, you know, who knows, maybe you came on a night when it was being sung live, and there is
that fascinates me, because I just always assumed and knew that it was tracked, you know, that was the word on the street. But then who knows, because I swear, you know, once or twice I thought to myself, God, that doesn't sound like a track. And I saw enough people in and out that I always wondered, you know, about that. So thank you for sharing that. We have another question. Let's see who this is from. This is from, oh, hang on, my phone has to see my face. Okay, here we go. Let's see, this is from Raj, who is a member of Theater Talk. And he says, first of all, big shout out to everybody. He's seen everyone in the show except for Claire. Although I did
young, Raj, that's why.
But he saw your Mrs. Brill. So he saw you do that. And he said that he just, you know, such an admiration and such love for the show. But he said his question to those who were with the London production for a long time was, did Hal, or how often did Hal come back to visit? Was it like once a year or less? And was there anything that he stressed each time that he visited, or that he wanted to fix? And that's for everybody.
Yeah, Jimmy, I think it might be good for you to start with this. Why don't you?
Yeah, he came. To be honest, Lynn will probably remember more than I will. But during my time there, and it was a long time, although I was looking after the tour for a few years, as well as being in town and then ultimately in town all the time. But yes, he came reasonably regularly, I think, considering that he was based in New York and had so many other things to look after. But when he came, I don't think there was any one thing that he would home in on. He would always find something fresh to leave with us and to point out and for us to work on. And that was what was so incredibly encouraging about it, that he always came with a sort of attitude that he had to look at it with a fresh eye and leave us something genuine to look at. That's the difficult thing about looking after any of these productions. I remember Nick Hallett saying to me early on in my time as resident director, Jim, you don't have to be in the theatre every night. Go away for a bit. And of course, I had this overwhelming conscience about the fact that my job was to be there and look after it. But you can get blind to a show. You can get to the point where you're looking at it and you're not seeing anything. So I used to ultimately decide, right, I'll just look at Act 1 tonight, and then the next night I'll look at Act 2. Then I'd say, right, I'll just look at Carlotta tonight, or I'll just look at the two managers tonight, and try and give myself some particular focus. And that was what Hal was very good at. He would come and he would pick on's a terrible expression, but he would find something to focus on and to leave us with to work on as he went away. The difficulty was that Gilly did that as well. And I hope they're not here with us now, God bless them. And if they're listening to me, they'll both know how honest I'm being. Sometimes the difficulty was that Gilly would come in and talk about something that maybe the next time Hal came, he would talk about it and they wouldn't necessarily be in agreement about it. And that was a bit of a dilemma. But my job, I've always felt, was to sort of try and understand them both and to incorporate what they both did. There's a bit of diplomacy required when you're in that position, you know, between one and the other. And in my day, Lynn was pointing out that when she became resident choreographer, associate choreographer, she took on more and more jobs. Up until I left, the director still looked after managers, for instance. And of course, that scene was originally staged by Gilly. I have it in fairly good authority that after Hal saw how wonderful it was, he rather regretted that he gave it to Gilly to stage. And of course, it's just the most gorgeous thing, not in the least because Maria Bjornsson conceived what they wanted to do so wonderfully. This black wall with a chair and a table at one particular side of the stage and this black hole at the other side, and how as the scene develops, it swells into the black stage left side, and they actually take a chair over there and do a wee bit of rotating with it, so that eventually they fill the whole stage to confront the Phantom. It's just the most wonderful concept, and I think Maria helped them do that. You did talk about, Claire was talking about Maria earlier, and I want to say a small thing about Maria. I had a conversation with her once in Edinburgh in a bar, and we were talking away about things, because I may remind you, as Ellen suggested, that when we started Phantom, Maria was actually, apart from Alan Hatton, who had been stage manager at Scottish Opera, Maria was the only person I knew. And when the coffee break came, we found ourselves standing next to each other, and I said, "I'm so excited, Maria, this is my first musical." And she said, "I'm so excited as well, it's my first musical." So we shared that moment. But later in a bar in Edinburgh, we were talking about it and how it was conceived, how she had endless meetings with Hal and with Andrew, and how they were discussing what they wanted to do and so on. And of course, she would quietly sit at these meetings listening to what they were saying. And I have another book about theatre designers, and she has a chapter in it. And she heads a chapter by saying the designer's job is to ask what the problems are and solve them. And she told me that she once had a conversation with Hal when he openly admitted that she solved the problem. She got there before any of the rest of them. They talked endlessly about how they wanted to do things and what they wanted to do. She listened and she solved it. And I was rather pleased that Hal was such a so magnanimous as to say, you got there before we did, because that's what she was. She was a problem solver. And of course, the fact that the show was originally staged in Her Majesty's Theatre, the history in that theatre, it used to be an opera house years and years ago. And of course, under the stage, there are about 3 other levels below the stage, which means that things like understage machinery, the actual old turbines and winches and things are still there, or they were still there. I think because of heritage and stuff, they can't take them away. They introduced some steel stuff for Phantom, but the original oak workings were all still there, and you can actually go down under the stage for about 3 levels. She used her knowledge of theatre and theatrical history and saw right away the fact that the show was going to be staged in that building, because there aren't many buildings left in London with all of that. And she made use of it all. That's why we had somebody disappearing down a trapdoor, people walking up from under the stage, stuff coming out of the floor and growing and so on. So a wee bit of a shout out to her there. It was great that we had Maria coming in as often as somebody's already mentioned. I remember her coming in one day and she sat in an empty dressing room during the day and drew every wig for Don Juan. In Don Juan, ultimately, the wigs became like, I'm probably using the wrong technology, but they became hard, sort of like fiberglass things. But she drew every curl and every wave so that the people making them in this new way would know exactly what to produce. She did that in the theatre. I remember having a chat with her while she did it. But the fact that she came in and attended so much, she also came and saw the tours. From over in Ireland, she came over. I can remember meeting her there. And the fact that Jilly came in so often and Hal came in, someone talked about their investment in, not in a monetary sense, but an artistic and creative sense. All of my time there, and it's a long time since I've been there now, over the years, I think I remember that most of all. I don't think I ever saw it again until just before lockdown. I was doing the Bill Kenwright production of Cabaret, and God, the name of the Rufus Sewell, the director, not Rufus Sewell, he's an actor, isn't he? Who do I mean? Claire, who do I mean? You have to unmute yourself.
Anyway, Rufus Norris.
That's who I mean. God, wonderful man. He came in to see us one day and decided he was enjoying what he was seeing, and he spent 2 days working with us, Anita Harris, who I had the pleasure of working with. He did a couple of days with us, and it was just fantastic. I don't remember any other shows since in Phantom and then to Cabaret where creatives invested quite so much invaluable stuff to get it straight from the horse's mouth, as it were.
I think that's amazing, and there is something about the show that's so special that it just kept bringing them back. It's really such a moment in time. I don't know if they could have mounted, or if it would be possible to mount such a production today. Like if we were starting from scratch, I don't know if it could happen the way that it happened, because things have changed so much. But thank you so much for that. Let me scroll through some more questions here. And John, you just tell me when we're out of time. But
we're okay. As long as everybody keeps on, as long as everybody wants to keep on talking, I'm quite happy for things to go on as long as you want to stay with us.
I don't have too many more, just a handful, but I wanted to make sure I get through.
Is Peter still with us? Oh, yeah, Peter Kavanagh, you had a question for
Yeah, did you want
Claire.
to pop in, Peter? Yeah.
You want to unmute yourself, Peter?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, loud and clear.
Like the voice of the Phantom.
There's probably lots of people Zooming tonight, but I bet nowhere else has somebody said I had to get my blinks in. I bet no one in the world, other than on this Zoom, has uttered those words.
Accurate.
Well, it's a sort of a question, but it's a sort of a comment as well. I'm just a fan of the show, so I'm just a geezer. But I suppose I just wanted to say thank you to so many of you, whether you were the Phantom himself or whether you were the stage manager or whoever you were, for the immense joy that you have brought to about what must be millions of people. And I know it was your job, and I know you were paid, and I know you should have been paid more, but the fact that you worked so hard and brought so much joy to so many people, and just sort of listening to your stories tonight, I guess the only thing I wanted to add, just as a simple fan, someone who hung around the stage door trying not to look like a stalker since 1988, is just really to say that you, like, your stories are of course your own, but we as fans, we have our stories. I have my story of in I think it was 88, my first time leaving Paignton in Devon to get on a National Express bus with my ticket for Phantom of the Opera and seeing Claire and Dave Willits and Michael Ball, I think. I mean, I'll just never forget that. To be sat here tonight with like Jimmy Paterson, and to know, Jimmy, that those two, you remember those cassettes, Phantom of the Opera, they were grey, the text was grey on it. And I probably heard your voice every day for about 3 or 4 years, you know, playing on that.
Poor thing, you need therapy.
Yeah, I know that. And I'm saving up for it, Jimmy. You know, I'm saving up for it. And Mike Sterling here, certainly many of the fans think so highly of you as one of the great Phantoms, and so I'm so pleased that you are here tonight as well. So I just wanted to ask really a general question, and I don't, maybe it's too general to ask, but are you aware of the impact that you have all had on so many of us who, for a couple of hours, have sat in a theatre and been able to forget all about our problems and forget all about some of the difficulties of our lives and just soak in the melodrama? I just wondered, and maybe it is a bit too much of a general question, so I understand that, but maybe someone can jump in. Are you aware of the impact that your stories are also part of our stories, people you've never met, who remember the show, who now, because of the internet, are able to meet up and talk about the show, and the incredible, like, the Phantom of the Opera is part of my life story, visiting it, experiencing it, and so I want to say thank you on behalf of lots of people who aren't here, in ways that, I mean, I could go on for all night saying thank you, but are you aware of the impact that you've had on so many people whose lives have been impacted by it, really?
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, I mean, who wants to jump in there? Were you aware of the impact that the show was having on the public?
I'll come in if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Remembering from these first days, you're talking about being in the queue at the stage door. Do you remember we had a returns queue every night? And it seemed like life was going to be passing, I don't know how many people can get in a line from the corner of Her Majesty's Theatre up Charles II Street, away past the stage door. But it seemed to me in these days that that was going to be part of the existence of the show. And the regularity of coming in 6 nights a week, passing all these people queuing for returns and standing there to the last minute, and probably in the early days, certainly many of them not being successful. So I know there's an awful lot of people that have been through all of that. And I meet now and again, about 4 or 5 years ago, I met a young chap called Adam Robert Lewis, who we were working on a workshop of a musical called Guy Fawkes. I was playing King James I, and I can't remember what Adam was playing. He'll hate me for that. But he was one of these young guys who, I don't think he was even born on the 9th of, when was it, October 1986. But he'd grown to love it so much and had aspirations of playing the Phantom, and became a great friend, and he had endless questions that I hope I answered. And he eventually got onto the show as a swing, became Phantom Cover and played it. And indeed, the last time I saw the show was when he was on as Phantom, and he asked me to come in a matinee and see him, and I sat in the sound desk. And he was wonderful. So I keep meeting people like him that weren't even born when this all happened 5 years ago. I keep meeting all these people. And the other thing that reminds me about how long and how many people it's affected, my elder son, Richard, who's 42 now, he came when I was resident director in Edinburgh. He came up and did a week's work experience, 2 weeks work experience there. And he worked with the stage management and the sound crew and the lighting people and so on for a fortnight, and was introduced to everybody as Jimmy's son. And he's still working in theatre. And the new set that's in Her Majesty's, it was the set they used in Leicester for what would have been the tour, had COVID not interrupted it. He built it, and then because it was closed, he had to go and dismantle it as part of his technical duties and so on. And he's still working in theatre now, but he grew up from being a wee 6-year-old when I first did the show, and his younger brother, 4, and them recording the two of them singing the Phantom duet on their Fisher-Price tape recorder, which we still have and cherish. Alan sings the cadenza, Claire, live, and he squeaks and farts about on the top notes, and Richard's laughing in the background. And what are you laughing at? And he says, Alan sounds like me playing my recorder. So I know my son's got to be 42, and unfortunately, I introduced him to Phantom of the Opera when he was only 16. And yes, I think I probably am aware that the show has become a memory or a moment or an experience in the lives of a hell of a lot of people. I think I'm aware of that. I don't always think about it, and maybe I don't always appreciate it because, you know, you have to go on with other things. But no, I think when you stop and ask me the question, yes, I think, and I hope I am aware. Thanks for asking that, Peter.
It's an amazing thing, isn't it? I mean, I think with that, the fact that, you know, Phantom and Les Mis, you know, with these two big mega musicals, and you know, they become so beloved all around the world, and people have such an attachment to them. And you know, you hear of people, you know, oh, they went on the first date to watch Phantom, and now you know, they've been married for 30 years, or whatever, and all this kind of thing. And it's just, I just think, wow. I mean, I suppose it's difficult for you to like you say, like you said, Jimmy, you know, you have to sort of take that step back in that moment to go, to actually be asked it, to realize the impact that it's had. And you know, like I say, the love affair that the public have had with the show and still continue to have with the show is just amazing. And I'm just wondering, does anybody else have anything to add there with you know, regarding the impact on the show, with, you know, with the public, as
sure,
well as your own lives?
There's I mean, one thing that strikes me as well, apart from the show and going to see the show, is the impact outside of that. You know, like when you do it in concerts and things like that. Once you mention anything, Phantom, whoa, you know, they're there immediately. You know, it's like they're excited. They want to hear that big tune, the big track. You know, with the famous thing with all the guitars and those great voices and that. You know, Christine doing the cadenzas and everything else. It's like a magic. You know, it keeps on moving all the time, and it's and I'm sure, like with Claire would agree, and look, you know, it's something about those iconic roles that are just such a gift, and it never fails to create that sort of mystique. You know, they love it, they absolutely love it, and I think we all aim for that. You said about the escapism. You've got 2.5 hours. It's such an important part, and I've tried to actually say this quite a lot of politicians recently, you know, about the importance of our business, and particularly economically, and how many. I mean, there's endless amounts of businesses that are connected to theatre, And of course, what's the first thing that gets slashed with funding is the arts, and I just never get that. So I think the Phantom bunch have to get. I think we gotta take that one on as well. So, you know, a little journey and say, guys, you know, you got to sort that out. We got to stop that, because can you imagine, you know, something we need? I mean, I don't think there'll ever be anything like Phantom or any of the great ones that are Cats or Leviathan and things like that have done 35, 36, 40 years respectively. But there will be great works in the future, and I think we've got to keep it open, you know, for the new kind of productions to come. But I agree with you, Claire. I there's something very passionate about that original, the great, brilliant original, with all those amazing people we've talked about, Hal and Jilly and Jeff and all these great, Maria. Oh my days! You're right. She was scary, but she was amazing. You know, she was scarily, she was very friendly, but she you notice when you put the pins in and things like that, you know, like, ow, stop being so silly and let me get off. You know, she was so funny. She was so lovely and yeah, brilliant. So once you take that out of the production, then it's not the brilliant original anymore. But at least we have that memory there, and so does everybody else.
Yeah,
and everybody else sort of being part of that era. Amazing. Can I just say thank you so much, everybody? But I do have to go now because my daughter's starving. So
Mike,
don't let her starve. Feed her.
So I gotta go. I don't know if you're going for an Indian or for Azizi or something. So yeah, I just picked her up today, but she said a little low earlier. She's great. So thank you so much. Lovely to see everybody.
Thank you,
Mike.
Thanks, Mike, for joining us. Thank you.
Love you guys.
Thank you, Mike.
Bye.
Catch up with everybody at some point or another individually. All right. Lots of love.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Pleasure.
Okay, I think we're down to the last couple of questions.
I was just.
Can I just say, sorry, before first of all, Peter, sorry, and how lovely this has been. But Peter, thank you for your comments, which is, and I just think, yes, it was hard work. We all worked hard, as you said earlier, about putting the show on. But I have to say, it never felt like just a job. It was never just a job. In fact, it never really felt like a job. Every day of being there was a privilege. And if I could fit into the frocks now, or they could zip 3 together for me, I'd still be on that stage playing Christine right now. I never, ever got tired of being there, ever. And that was because of the sense of family on stage, backstage, in the pit, from the audience, thanks to all of you, because you don't think about the impact you're having. Of course not. But it's lovely that you say that, because you think it's an incredible piece of work. I don't think it will ever age or date because of it being a piece of written in a historical manner, I think, in a way. So I think musically, and it won't date. But it's so lovely to hear you say that, and to think how that actually looking back, you know, 35 years later with my grown-up kids and goodness knows what, and a very different life now than it was then in many ways, but just what a wonderful, wonderful time it was doing that beautiful show and meeting all these wonderful people. And yeah, it's never felt like just a job, ever. And thank you for reminding me of that.
Oh, bless you.
No, I mean it. No, really. It's great. It's so fun. I need to have to go and get another drink, I think. Here on my own, Billy No Mates. It's just me and the dog tonight, so it's great.
Oh, bless you. Just one more quick question, Claire. I mean, you brushed on it briefly earlier on, but you almost went back into the show as Carlotta. How was that? And were you, obviously, it must have been really gutting for you when you had your accident with your ankle. Was there no opportunity for you to go back to the show at a later date, or was it kind of that was it then?
I think I'd been being asked for a long old while, and I'd never really thought about myself as a Carlotta, to be honest. And and it's a very different sing from Christine. It might not sound like it when you're sitting out watching it from out front, but it's a very different voice type. But then, of course, I'm a lot older and was a lot older then than when I played Christine. And eventually I thought, well, maybe it would be fun. But when I was asked, I said, I will only do it if I can go and work with the musical director and you, because it's all very well you having this idea of wouldn't it be lovely to have Claire playing Carlotta, but I might be rubbish. So before we go down any of that route, it's really important that we work through it together and see what we think. And on that day, I'm working with the MD and just having a lovely time. I thought, actually, do you know what? It does feel right. I've always felt happy going back into that building. You're always welcomed back, whether people know you or not, doesn't matter. It's a welcoming space. And I thought, actually, it will be lovely. And I never really got to find out, but I was enjoying the rehearsals hugely. But I broke my ankle very badly, and it took a long time to heal. And suddenly it was a different moment, that's all. And so, you know, it obviously wasn't meant to be, but it was lovely to be there fleetingly and to be back there again. And you know, it was a shame. It was a shame, but you know, we had a go.
Oh, bless you.
No, so you know, and I just love the show, and you know, when I said earlier about us being lucky enough to be in the brilliant original, and it has changed now. It doesn't mean to say that it's going to be any less brilliant. And I hope that the next 35 years will be as enjoyable for the next phase of Phantom people, be they on stage, backstage, or in the audience, you know, because it is a very special piece. So,
has anybody seen the new version yet? Great. Okay, so like on a scale of 1 to 10, how different did you find it, or like how changed did you find it?
It's difficult, isn't it, when you're so attached to something emotionally, to go in with a fully open mind. And I tried very hard not to make any comparisons, because of course whenever you go and see the show, it's going to be different anyway. And so there were some things different, but I was glad to be there. I was glad to be there, being part of it, and seeing the audience loving it still. I have things I like better, don't like as much, blah, blah, blah. But that's just my opinion. I'm just one person. It doesn't really matter what I think. So, you know, it's great to see that it's still there, being loved, being performed beautifully. And but if we're the one thing I am sad about is that it doesn't have the orchestra.
That, you know what, I will agree with you on that, because that was the main reason, or one of the main reasons, that I would keep going back, was because it was the only place you could hear a big orchestra in a musical, you know.
Yeah, and the thing is, with technology being so brilliant now, it still sounds amazing. You look into the pit and there's not an orchestra there. And musical theatre, there's a clue in the title, musical. We would not be an industry without our musicians. And just to be political for a second, we need to support our musicians, and they should be part in the proper way of whatever a production is. You know, in New York, as I'm sure you'll know, John, that every house has a minimum requirement of musicians in the pit.
Yeah.
You have to adhere to that, and it's a difficult thing, because every time, you know, of course producers need to save money, and they need to save money now, but not looking after our musicians is a very bad thing for the future of musical theatre in the long term, in my opinion. And even though it still sounded amazing, and I wouldn't have known any different, it still saddened me.
I agree. There's something your body or your brain, something knows when those strings aren't real and when those horns aren't real. Like, it's just something that you just don't get use the word freestyle earlier. You just don't get that as brilliant as the technology is.
No, because that's played by a human being, and only that one person will play that violin like that person, and that's what makes it alive. And I never want the world to get to a stage where an orchestra is 78 keyboards.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And I couldn't agree more.
So I'll probably never work again if anybody is. But hey ho, you know what I mean?
No.
I'm retirement age, I'll take it. And by the way, Matthew, are you sitting in front of the Paris Opera House?
What's that?
Are you sitting in front of the Paris Opera House?
Yes, I am actually.
I love
in California,
oh my God, it's Matt.
I don't need to see you. I don't need to see anybody seeing my apartment. So I'm sitting in front of the Paris Opera House. Yeah.
I have to introduce this man, Matt. Although I think you have to turn off your background because Facebook gets like weird about, or not Facebook, YouTube gets weird about backgrounds. If it's
he'll be fine.
Background, will be okay.
Yeah, he'll be fine. Yeah,
okay.
I'll be happy to change it.
This was going to be, I was going to end with this. I think this will be our final moment, but I'm so glad Matt is here. So for those who do not know, which is everyone, Matthew and I dated how many years ago? It was like 25?
26.
26 years ago, we dated, and it was amazing. And one of our things, we had a lot of things, you know, musical theater gays, of course, but one of our things was we would be, you know, laying in bed and we would always listen to the same thing without fail. And it was always Claire Moore, Child of the Earth. In particular, I'm just an ordinary girl. And I mean, without fail. So I kind of feel like you were there with us, Claire, you know, like talk about people's impact on our lives. I feel like you were in this relationship with us because you were so present. So just wanted to say thank you.
Well, thank you. Can I just say that, well, I don't think I've ever heard anybody ever talk about that record. And so I'm so glad I was there for you, boys.
Thank you. Thank you. You facilitated and you know,
your
blessed our love.
It was definitely about the voice and not necessarily about the material.
Fair enough, I'll take that.
But yeah, it's so crazy. Like if you could have told, you know, 25-year-old me that one day you and Matt and I would sit here and we'd tell you the story and have a laugh, you know, from 3 different countries. It's you know, it's crazy. It feels like a good place to wrap, but thank you so much. You know, and thanks for being a good sport. We hoped you wouldn't be too mortified.
There you go, Claire. You're a serenader to 2 gay bears.
Oh, we weren't even bears then. We were just, you know, just weak cubs.
You can thank the boys.
I want to say a massive thank you to all of you for joining us today. I can't believe it. It's over 2 hours we've been chatting away here. It does, you know, just time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? So a big, massive thank you to you all for joining us. It's been wonderful. And, you know, thank you from myself and from John and all the rest of the Theatre Talk team. Hopefully, I don't think we'll have to do very little editing on this recording.
It should be good to go. But you know what? We have to thank somebody else, John. We have to thank Mark Pawsey. And we have to thank Jackie Craig for putting us in touch with Mark Pawsey. So thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Mark, because you guys really made this happen. So thank you both for being lovely. And Mark, I hope you get back to 100% soon. I'm so sorry you've been dealing with all that.
Thank you. I would just like to say that this was the easiest thing to do because everybody I reached out to said yes immediately, but that's part of the connectivity of this family. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Well, everybody,
God bless.
You know, continue being careful. Take care of yourselves. Don't get sick.
You
okay. Bye, and thank you all.
Thank
Thanks.
you all.
It was really wonderful.
Yes, thank you very much. It's been absolutely marvelous, and thank you to our audience members as well for joining us too.
Indeed, thank you, audience members.
Yes. Okay.
All right,
then.
I'm gonna.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. I'm gonna pull the plug. In 3,
Bye.
2, 1. Here